today we're going to talk about solving equations. Now, every single equation today is different. There isn't a set way to do it, but it depends on how many x's you have to solve for, right? So there's lots of different options and ways to try. One is if x, let's say it this way. If it's a linear equation, then get x by itself, right? You're just solving for x. If it's an absolute value equation, then we want to get the absolute value by itself. Lose the hat. Thank you. Get the absolute value by itself and set up two equations. All right. So that's if they're linear or absolute value. If it's quadratic, which means if I say it's quadratic, what does that tell you about the power on x? What is it? Quadratic means 2. Very good. Okay? So if it's quadratic, we can solve it a bunch of different ways. One way was by factoring and set equal to 0. Another way, if there was no middle term to our quadratic, we did the square root method. Another way to solve for a quadratic is completing the square, but none of you like that, so we're not going to do that one. Okay? We won't revisit that one right now. And then, of course, we have the quadratic formula. All right? If it's a higher function, you have two options. Option 1 is to factor it, if you can factor. Option number 2 is the fundamental theorem of algebra. Do you guys remember the fundamental theorem of algebra? In that one, you were given a function, and maybe the highest function was to the 4th power. You had to find 2 zeros to get it down to a squared, right? Then, if you recall, we did synthetic division to get your function from 4th power down to a squared, and then you could either factor or do the quadratic. Right? Remember those pages? Like problems that took like this much? Okay. That was right before that. Yeah, you did the long one-sided tic-tac-toe for synthetic division. Right? We did a couple in a row, and you get like 3, 4, 5 answers, right? Depending on what the highest exponent is. Okay? The one thing I want to remind you today is when you're solving, whatever the exponent is on x, that's the number of solutions you need to have. Okay? All right, so let's do a couple examples. Example number 1. Let's start off with something super easy. So I just want you to solve, and I'm only going to write solve once through my examples here. So let's say I have 5x plus 2 equals 7x minus 3. So this is x to the 1st power, so this is linear, right? If it's linear, all you have to do is get x by itself. We know how to do that, don't we? We're going to move our x's to the left, so I'm going to subtract 7x to this side. So I have negative 2x plus 2 equals negative 3. I'm going to subtract 2 to the other side. So I have negative 2x equals negative 5. And then what? Yeah, divide by negative 2. And x equals 5 halves. Beautiful. Super easy, right? Okay. Example number 2. What if I have the absolute value of 3x plus 2 equals 5? Alright. This is an absolute value one, which means the first thing you have to do is get the absolute value by itself. Is it by itself? Okay. When you have an absolute value, you set up two equations. Equation number 1 is you just drop the absolute value. So I have 3x plus 2 equals 5. And the second one is a negative 5, exactly. 3x plus 2 equals negative 5. If that was an inequality sign in there, you'd flip the inequality sign, right? Along with making a negative? Okay. So now we just got to solve them both. Here I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So 3x equals 3, which means x equals 1. Very good. And over here, subtracting 2 from both sides, I get 3x equals negative 7. So x equals negative 7 over 3. Again, seem pretty easy? All right. You guys are doing great. Example number 3. What if we have x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. All right, so this is a quadratic. You have some options. You can see if it factors. Say your factors equal to 0. There is a b term, so we can't use the square root method, right? Or you could do the quadratic formula. Which one do you guys want to do? You want to do the quadratic? Okay, we can do the quadratic. So remember that this is A, this is B, and this is C. Alright, so I have negative B, so positive 5, plus and minus the square root, B squared, minus 4 times A times C, all over 2A. Underneath that square root, I have 25 minus 24. What do I have? 1. What's the square root of 1? 1. Alright, so we have 5 plus and minus 1 over 2. Let's simplify those. Start with the top one. 5 plus 1 is 6. Divided by 2. 3 over 1 or just 3? Okay, second one, we're going to do the subtraction. 5 minus 1 is 4 over 2. And what does that one equal? 2. Okay. Did anybody want me to go back and factor this one and do it that way? Anybody? Okay. All right. So let's do this one. Lots of fun stuff here. How about example, what is this for? Okay. Let's solve for 3x to the third minus 3x equals 0. Alright, so this time we have x to the third power, which means how many solutions do we have to have when we're done? Gotta have 3, right? Okay. So, on this one, again, lots of different ways to look at this one. What's something somebody sees right off the bat? What do you see? Yeah, you can take out an x and you can take out what else? 3. So let's do that, okay? So we have 3x that leaves me with x squared minus 1. Okay. All right. So now, inside that parenthesis, that's a special one. What is that? What is it? You could do the square root method, or we also call it the difference of squares, don't we? But we can do the square root method. So let's take each of those factors and set them equal to 0, right? This factor has an x in it, so I can set that one equal to 0. And this factor has an x in it, so I can set that one equal to 0. All right, so this one, when I divide by 3, x equals what? 0. Over here, I add 1 over, I get x squared equals 1. Square rooting both sides, x equals what? Yeah, plus and minus 1. Okay, again, we could have factored this. Remember, it's the difference of squares, which would be x plus 1, x minus 1. And then you can set those each equal to 0 if you want to. That works. Okay? So really, today's a matter of deciding what's the best way to solve your equations. All right? Everyone's a little bit different. You can do some discussion between you guys. See if you can figure out which one's best. Okay? So you have to do 37 through 52 all. Because some of them aren't going to take you very long. Some are super easy. Some are a little bit tougher. Okay? But I want you to do it algebraically. Cover your face up, Tyler. Tyler. Well, I'm sorry, but we all are in the same boat, dude. Okay. 37 through 52. All right. You guys good? Any questions? 52. Page 61, 37 through 52 all.